Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Magicians. A very good episode. I love that in this episode we had Julia and Josh, which I even love him being like, oh man, I was kind of hoping this would be kind of like, a Josh and Julia kind of adventure type of episode, type of thing, and Julia's been like, oh, it was like, that's so cute, and it turns out to be the case. They end up being the focus of the episode, which is kind of interesting, because it's like a pairing I didn't see like coming, but nevertheless, I do appreciate that basically they took that one bit from season 2, the whole like, oh, using the Tesla coil, and then like, oh, looking at a different timeline, and it's like they applied it to this episode by making it so they actually go to a timeline. I was like, that's so good. It's like one little thing, like obviously it played a big part last season because it was helping figure out how to get Alice back in everything with her shade and everything, getting that whole situation figured out. So it helped in that. So it helped in the overall major plot, but it was just kind of like this one-off thing. But it's like now we actually get to explore another time. And this one is 23, the same one that Alice was from. And we find out quite a few things. We find out Elliot and Margot died. They died trying to do that spell that which Alice attempted to use to kill the beast last season. But basically they wanted to make up for the fact is that they weren't gods trying to complete the spell. They ended up trying to combine their powers, and it ended up killing them. Margot got it hard because it like blew up like half her face, which is kind of interesting in like retrospect, because it's like, well, just because like in that world, like obviously it's like the left side of her face, but obviously like in our world she lost her right eye. Obviously it was more of her face, but still her eye and everything. So I feel like they did that on purpose. Never really explained how Elliot died. I don't know whether it's a situation if he killed himself or maybe he just died, because they're making it seem like the beast killed him. Maybe that is the case, but it seemed like it was maybe it's not just that the spell went wrong. Maybe the beast actually did kill them before they could like. They tried the spell, but it didn't work, and then the beast proceeded to kill them. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. And speaking of the beast, I kind of figured it was going to be Quentin. Just had a feeling the moment it's like, oh yeah, the beast is looking for Julia. I'm like, why would Martin Chatwin be? He wouldn't. Only person I feel like that would be looking for Julia would have to be Quentin. I was like, so even I was kind of, and everyone had the same question, like, how the hell did that happen? I was like, that's so interesting. And then it turns out, oh yeah, the reason why that happened was because Alice, having met Quentin last season, seeing that, oh my God, in another timeline, he's still alive and everything, and telling her that he loved her and everything, it made her want to get her Quentin back so much. So basically she made a deal for Creature so that Quentin could be raised, but Quentin was brought back without his shade, and he went crazy, killed Martin, killed Ember, took his magic, and because he killed a god, all the magic in the world got taken away. But like Julia, because he took a god's power, his powers work differently, so he got to keep his magic, and he's just basically been ravaging, like wreaking havoc, which is so weird to think about it, because that means, I mean, to be fair, that's just like not having a shade. That does that to everybody. We saw what kind of person Julia was, but like Julia did have god level power, so there was that. In a world where no one can compete with you, yeah. So, God, that's gotta be the suckiest thing. At least they had magic to fight Martin Chatwin last season. It's like, I can't imagine what it's like without it, because we literally have that scenario right here. It's like, that's crazy. And that's kind of interesting too, because it's like, because the thought process was like, those timelines no longer exist, because like once the spell, like now that a new timeline exists, like they technically, it seems like a situation of those timelines still exist. You can't get to them or like interact with them, but I guess with the power of one of the keys, I guess it makes it possible. They were wondering how they got there, but I guess it's a situation of the key takes you to where you need to go. So, I mean, that was still something we never actually found out from Quentin in this episode, is where he actually got this key from. It turns out this is actually the 7th key, and that's something even Josh was kind of like, do you actually even have to get the keys in order? Apparently not, because they got the 7th key before they got the 6th key, because the 6th key operates the fairy realm, and it's like you take that, well, their world kind of collapses. So I guess the keys kind of compensated for it. I was like, okay, get the other key, which is key allows you to see the future. Obviously, I'll kind of get to that soon enough, but it's like, It's crazy to think about that. Like, whatever this quest is, it is actively adapting. I mean, it seems like the keys themselves it seems like it is like, oh, we take you to where you need to be. Not necessarily where you want to go, but where you need to be. So it took Josh and Julia where they needed to be because they were the only ones that kind of helped with this situation. I do appreciate that Marina's still alive in this world because basically when the beast came, Break Bills and the Hedge Witches had to come together. Obviously, Julia died in this one because because this is one of the timelines where Julia went to Break Bills, so Quentin and her went to Break Bills, and then the beast ended up killing them. So I guess that was even more reason why Quentin came back and killed him. I mean, that and plus he just wanted, more power, and he just couldn't. It's kind of part of revenge. It's just like, oh, you killed me, so last thing I want is you running around here, you douchebag. And so it took Martin Chapman out. So they never explained how he did that, though. I mean, how would you? Well, I guess I don't know. He had to have found somebody. It's like, how do you kill, not unless he killed Ember before he did it or something like that. I don't know. It seemed like he killed Ember after he killed Martin. So, I don't know. Either way, a lot of interesting things about this timeline. Obviously, there's the other Josh, which that was the whole thing I love. He ends up talking about the quickening. It's because he had that, because of that disease, which something they brought up last season, didn't think it turned into anything. It's the lycanthropy, the werewolf disease he has. It's like, oh yeah, actually it has side effects because there is no actual cure for it. I was like, oh my god, we're taking these little things and actually making them into something. It's not like just one-off things. It's like, no, these actually have effects. Apparently, he turns into a werewolf eventually at some point in his timeline and will end up killing everyone near him. So it's like, that sucks. Obviously, he couldn't get any other words from 23 Josh, our Josh, which, yeah, this is 40, right? Or is this 39? It went back 39 times, but was this the 40th time or the 30? This would make this the 39th time. I don't know. Because if it went back 39 times, this would be the 39th attempt, wouldn't it? Yeah, so it'd be the 40th attempt, but it'd be the 39th time they went back, right? So that's, nevertheless, our Josh, which I love that he takes the coat and everything. And Marina's like, oh, isn't that Josh's jacket? Huh. It looked better on him. And he's like, wow. It looked cooler on him. And Josh is like, wow. Thanks for just making me, you really are mean. I love that they ended up talking to Henry, and Henry ended up admitting something that I just like. He's like, yeah, I'll admit I killed a leprechaun. And it's like, oh, he's like, I'm not proud of it. Basically, kind of what Irene and her family were doing, where they basically ground up fairies for magic. Basically, everyone kind of went nuts when magic went away and ended up trying to do the same thing themselves in this timeline, trying to scrounge up any bit of magic they could. Also, we saw that really quickly, we also learned just how more powerful Julia's gotten, because even she told Henry, it's like, okay, so actually I changed all the wards on the school. He's like, wait, by yourself? He's like, yeah. It's like, that's impossible. It's like, no, apparently since helping the fairies, she's gotten even stronger. So it's like, I guess she's like pro-tag, like syndrome going on, like, oh yeah, the more I help out people, the more of a good person I am, the stronger I get. Yeah, being a good person fuels me with power. It seems like it might be that type of thing. To the point she got rid of Marina's scar, she cured a headache, and it was like, oh yeah, and I got rid of your smoking addiction. It's like, what? That's crazy, dude. Godlike powers, dude. Holy shit. And even that, like I said, I went off on a tangent. I do apologize. The point I was going to bring up earlier was the fact is you can affect timelines. That's what I was getting at. Because like even Julie was like, no, this is actually our fault because we showed her Quentin, and because of that inspired her to do this, which gave birth to Monster Quentin. And it's like, oh wow, that the timelines can affect each other like that. Like, because like I said, my whole process, the thought process was like, these timelines no longer exist because they've moved on. So it's like, hey, let's like, it no longer exists, but it's like, even though they're not the main timeline anymore, even though other timelines have branched off and been created, those timelines still exist and they're still going on. Because even folks like, really? I gotta live through this, like, 16 more times? Literally? Seriously? Damn, that sucks. Because he was like, oh, I thought 22 was bad, but man, 23 is just as sucky, if not more depressing. I was like, wow. Also ran into Penny. That was a nice twist. Turns out him and Julia were a thing in this. It's like, what? So that must mean he must have never met Katie. Well, because to be fair, like a lot of stuff went, well, I don't know what her situation is, because this is one of those timelines where Julia went to Breakbill, so obviously everything went down way differently. I guess, no, because Katie was already in Breakbills when Julia was getting kicked out, right? I wonder how did that whole situation happen? I mean, I guess like Katie was there, but he ended up like meeting Julia, and that became a thing. Which I mean, like, I would assume that's going to continue being a thing since Penny decided to leave with her. That was interesting. And Morena, and it's like, oh, is anything bad going to happen about this? It's like, I don't know. We're bringing in people from a different timeline. For one, Morena's dead, so maybe that won't be as big of a deal. But also, in the other sense, it's like, well, Penny is in the underworld in his whole situation. That's going to get confusing when Katie, oh my God, Penny. And it's like, right, I'm not your Penny. I'm Penny from a different timeline, a timeline where I'm with Julia, which obviously Julia and Katie have like the whole best bitches situation last season, but then it's complicated because of the whole Reynard thing. She was super pissed at Julia, didn't want to work with Julia. Now they're kind of on good terms, but it's like, that's probably going to complicate things even worse, probably bring things to kind of being suck again. Maybe. So we'll have to see about that, which is definitely going to be interesting considering like Penny's whole library situation currently. So it's like, what's he going to do when he maybe potentially finds a way back, and it's like, oh yeah, there's another Penny. So it's like, what's up with that? But like I was getting to earlier, it's like, does that mean he's still going to try and make things work with this Julia? Because it's like, oh, I mean, this is a Penny that kind of probably most likely knows a lot about her, and it's going to, I mean, she's not really dating anyone. I mean, in my mind, I always thought it was going to be her and Q, but to be fair, there's the Q and Alice situation, so I kind of think that's unlikely, but I mean, it's still a possibility. But I thought it was kind of interesting how things were handled. I was like, oh, I thought she was just going to kill Q, but obviously it's her friend, no matter what the situation is, and so she wanted to try and speak to him. Sadly, he ended up killing Alice, which is just heartbreaking. Because even in his delusions, he still wanted to keep her alive. Why he ended up sparing her and nobody else. I mean, I guess it's kind of like, well, you brought me back to life, so I owe you that much. But nevertheless, what kind of took me by surprise was like she gave him her shade. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, that can't be a permanent thing. Are you? I was like, she's like, I can be okay without my shade. I was like, is that because of the God power thing, or is it just because you learned to be okay without your shade because you went without your shade for a while? I mean, she ended up taking it back, but Quentin feeling so distraught ended up killing himself. It's like, man, because he just couldn't bear with all the things that he's done, killed all his friends, all those innocent people. And then on top of that, he killed the woman he loved too, which is like, at least in some way, you're kind of like, oh, they're together. But then you remember, right, Alice made a deal to get Quentin back, and that she basically, her life belongs to that monster she ended up like making a deal with, which is like, basically, it's a Penny situation, but instead with the library, it's with a creature. Which is also the argument, too, is like, what happened to the librarians? And that's like something that was kind of brought up, and Penny was like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like that's kind of significant, especially considering in this current timeline, the library is up to some super shady shit. So it's like, also makes you wonder, like, since the quickening already happened in this timeline, does that mean the time frames are different? Even though they went back to this alternate timeline, did they go further ahead? Timeline wise, like, is it the future in timeline 23? Well, it would have to be, because I would assume, like, I mean, because I mean, who's to say? Well, obviously, it had to be at some point afterwards that Alice ended up, doing all this. But I mean, it's crossing timelines and stuff like that, and it's like time doesn't really advance across timelines. Well, I mean, when they pulled Alice out, and put her back in, she went back to whatever time she was at that point in time. So it's like when they ended up jumping into the timeline, it was further on in that timeline's future. So it's just interesting. Time travel is confusing as hell. Because it's not even just regular time travel, it's literally time traveling across alternate timelines, and that just gets a little, honky-dory, well, not honky-dory, gets confusing. I don't know why I said honky-dory. Ignore me, sorry. But the most interesting thing that we can walk away from this episode knowing is the fact of the matter is that Quentin saw something with the seventh key. Is like, the reason why he, wanted to keep the key is that he saw a vision of Julia taking the key and unlocking the lock to basically flow magic in this world, but she ends up awakening something else entirely, and it's like, wait, what? It's something so bad, even Quentin with his godlike powers, he's like, something even worse than I'm like, what the hell does that mean? What is sealed back there? Is that what the library's setting up for? Do they know that when this quest is all said and done? Like, are they readying up because they're like, are they ready to serve who or whatever the hell comes out when this is all said and done? I mean, does that mean they still go through if they're not? Because I mean, at the end of the day, they might not have a choice. Maybe Alice would make the decision herself. The library unlocks it. All hell breaks loose on this timeline. I have no idea. But like, could we still, like I said, we still have no idea what the hell the library is up to with all the ground up fairies they're collecting, getting any magic that they can, the humongous magic battery. Are they trying to are they trying to control whatever it is? Are they connected to whatever it is? And there's so many questions I have about this situation. I'm so very interested to see where all of this goes down in like the next episode with all of this continuing forward. It's like we have 6 out of 7 keys now. We have the 7th key, we just don't have the 6th key, which I still think is kind of interesting. I mean, to be fair, it's like if you were to compare just like a video game, it's like you did a quest line out of order. It's like you also kind of feel like there might be something about that. But to be fair, it's like a situation like we'll take you where you need to, but it's like I don't know. Like the keys work when they need to work, but it's like when you have all 7, can someone operate all 7 at once? Does it give you like super ultra mega powers? Is that something only Julia would be able to do because of the whole God thing? Like, I mean, where's her powers going to go to? It's like, is Julia going to keep her God powers or is she all going to get sapped away at the end? Is it like, oh, like the price to unlock all magic for the world is for her to sacrifice her God powers to do it? Whatever's in there comes up and sucks the power out of her, like, I feel like there's no way they're going to let Julia keep the powers. Or they can make it so that Julia ends up becoming a god. She basically is a god at this point in time. So who's to say she doesn't actually rise up and become a god, goes talk to the elder gods, and then just kind of like flips magic back on. I have no idea. Like, because I feel like there's no way they're going to get like one of their characters literally be a god and stay a god, especially amongst regular people. It's like they're going to do something with Julia's character. And I have no idea what they might have in mind, but I'm very interested to see where it all goes. Plus, like I said, we have Josh's whole monster form werewolf attack thing going on. We even had Penny from 23 being like, yo, if he does it and ends up hurting Julia, he will kill him. Plus, Penny's there too. Like I said, whatever Morena's going to end up doing, I'm very curious about that. I don't remember if Reynard ever killed off all the hedge witches. Obviously, he killed off quite a few, but I don't know if he killed them all off. So Morena could come back and be like, yo, I'm Morena. Like, she doesn't have to worry about the whole, like, oh, coming across herself. It's like, well, she's dead in this world, so. Which is kind of neat that Julia was kind of, well, not neat, but Morena was all like, no, let's sacrifice Alice, use her as bait. But she was like, Julia was kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like, why not? It's like, well, I used you for bait for a god, and you ended up getting brutally killed. And it's like, yeah. And that kind of sat with Julia, so. Like I said, I am so interested to see what goes down in the next episode with all of this. Oh yeah, and also too, really quickly, I know I need to stop. I always do that. Also want to know too about like the fairies, because like obviously Margot and Elliot are still super pissed because it's like, well, basically all this happened because, you know, the Queen Fairy did all the stuff she did, taking Elliot and Finn's child, plus the whole try and takeover situation, changing the ecosystem, basically getting them kicked off of their throne and letting someone like take control, which even that still messes with me super hard. But what's going to happen now? Because Julia's kind of made peace with the fairies, but at the same time, it's like, well, Margot and Elliot aren't all keen for that. But it's like the Fairy Queen, not as bad. I mean, especially because like she broke a deal, so their promises aren't as strong as it. So there's that whole thing like from last episode. So the question then becomes like, what happens now? Will she be able to mediate a truce between them? Would Margot and Elliot accept it? I mean, if it's for the best of Fillory, wouldn't they do it? I mean, especially because they're trying to, but at the same time, all that the Queen Fairy's done to them and taken from them. Especially in Margot's case, because she'll never get her eye back now. And that was kind of her part to play, but she did it in response to all the stuff that the Queen was doing, spying on them and everything. So it's mainly her fault and everything. So, like I said, I'm very curious to see how it all plays out in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.